I did it. I outsourced. I learned one very crucial lesson throughout this process, and I want to see if you picked it up before I did. So I'm going to explain what happened, and as soon as you think you know the lesson, comment it down below and I'll tell you what it is at the end. So I did what we mentioned last time. I hopped on Fiverr and I started looking for a virtual assistant that could help me.
Help me!
I started with a very small task, something that I thought would help me.
Help me!
But it wouldn't be terrible if it didn't work out. I wanted them to reach out to other podcast hosts on a site called Podmatch. I'll link it down below if you want to be a podcast guest or podcast host on there. And all I wanted them to do is say, hey, this is Nick. He'd be a great fit for your podcast. Love to schedule something. I obviously put in more instructions of how to reach out to them. I gave the VA a template of what to say, and I think that's kind of where it started to crumble. Everything went well, except for the part that took some critical thinking. So I gave a template that said, hey, podcast host name, like put the podcast host name. I'm reaching out on behalf of Nick. I see that your podcast covers these specific topics. Nick has this specific experience that would aid to your show, that would benefit your listeners in this way. That's pretty much the whole pitch, nice, concise, easy, but customized. I really wanted it to be personal. The problem is I don't think the VA had as much English comprehension as I thought they did. So when I interacted with them, it was totally fine. Communication was easy, smooth flowing. However, when it came showtime, instead of saying your podcast covers these specific topics, they were pasting the name of the podcast show. So it'd be like, you cover the Nickolas Natali show. And it's like, it kind of makes sense, but it also doesn't make all that much sense. 6 messages were sent. I only paid for an hour, which is pretty good. First time just trying to figure out how to navigate Podmatch and how to find people and send people. Totally get it. But as more messages got sent, they were copy pasting the template to the next message, which is fine. That's how it works and you're supposed to customize it. But they were sending it with the wrong name, and then they were having to write a follow-up apology email or message saying, so sorry about that. I'm following a template here. And it was hard to track. They did do a great job of customizing with the names at the top of the message. That's perfect. That's, couldn't ask for anything better. But also, this is something that would take time to understand my experience. So I gave examples of what my experiences were, but it's hard to translate that into a message, I guess, when you don't know. So I will take an L on that one. The lesson becomes, here is the lesson. Let's see if you got the same one I did. The lesson is, I didn't quite realize how important it is for VAs to be on top of their game when it comes to outward-facing clients, per se. This outreach affects my reputation. It affects how I'm perceived. And I didn't quite think of that it was such an outward-facing thing. It's a clear-cut task. However, it does carry more weight than I let on. It's in theory simple to send messages, but there's critical thinking involved of what experience matches this podcast host and how would my experience benefit their listeners. I understand that. That's not going to come from just banging them out. The other thing is I really loved knowing that somebody else was working on my stuff when I wasn't. It was nice. Somebody worked for an hour on doing outreach, although I wouldn't quite consider this a success. I did get scheduled on 1 out of 6. The other 5 denied me, but I think that's fine. All things considered, I probably would have gotten those same results. I would have maybe had a little bit more grace doing it myself, but I didn't have to do it. So that's good. And it did save me time going through all of those podcasts and reaching out. So the proof is that VAs are effective in accomplishing the tasks that you would like to outsource. There is some proven difficulty in expressing how to execute said tasks when there isn't a prior relationship. Thirdly, in the future for me, I think I'd probably feel more comfortable either with a VA that's in the US, so I know they have good reading and writing comprehension of English and they understand how to communicate maybe what I'm looking for. It might be easier just because it's outward facing. I think all internal tasks, I still would feel fine. I think she did a great job. I think she did a great job communicating with me. It was clear her work ethic was good, and she also was like, hey, I messed up and I would love to give you a free hour of work. I didn't take her up on it, but I thought that was a very classy move. I think there's people that probably would have been like, maybe not have told me they messed up, but then again, we both had access to the same account. The other thing was I also had to give her my password and login to these things, so that was kind of scary, but nothing detrimental yet. And I figured if something were to happen and this account got hacked or, I don't know what she would take. There's no credit card information or anything on here. But if I lost this account, it wouldn't be detrimental to my entire business. But she was trustworthy, she was cool. There's your social proof. Outsourcing. Our first outsourcing experience, it went great. If you want to know how much it cost, it was $5 for the hour. The other thing that made me really upset that I found out about is Fiverr charges the buyer and it takes from the seller. So it charges the buyer a service fee, which was like 20%, maybe a little bit more from the total cost of what the seller charges. And then the seller, they get 20% taken from their entire order, which I knew that, but I didn't know they were making money on both ends. They also take money from the tips, which I think is ridiculous. So Fiverr is just snagging money on every single transaction on both ends. That is wild. There you go. Those are all my lessons learned. Be sure to comment down below if you would be interested in hiring a VA, what you think I should have done differently. I included a lot of instructions. You know I came strapped. Subscribe for more of these types of videos where we experiment with how we can improve our business while also improving our lives. And be sure to listen to the podcast. We got some bangers coming out every single Friday, and I will see you next week. Bye.